Hi, I'm Nicholas King. This is Living the Classical Life.
Nicholas, we're so thrilled to have you here on Living the Classical Life. We've never told a story quite like yours, and we're really happy to have you here. You're a young pianist, and at your early age, you've already started a unique nonprofit organization. So let's take it from the beginning. You were born in Los Angeles?
I was.
Did you come from a musical family?
Not at all. My mother's a baker. My father ran a janitorial company, and I was very talented. I still am at video games, just amazing video game player. when I was 3, I discovered the Super Nintendo, and I was a master at the controls. My dad went to go and buy one, but this was before the days of GPS, and he's not that good with directions, so I got lost, ended up driving around LA for a few hours and passed a used piano shop. He came home with a yellow upright piano instead of a Super Nintendo console, and they looked in the newspaper and found my first piano teacher.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you disappointed that you didn't get the Super Nintendo?
I think so, yeah. I still am. I mean, it's a great console, and I mean, the piano isn't so bad. It's worked out pretty well for me, but I ended up with this yellow piano.
Did you immediately take to piano lessons? Was this a passion from the
I
beginning?
did. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I mean, it's an incredible instrument, and it's always been a lot of fun. I was sort of an outcast with it. I went to public school. I never had friends that were musicians. I was just the piano kid. But it's something that I've always loved.
What composers were you specifically drawn to in the beginning?
Elton John, hands down. I still am a huge Elton John fan. Outside of that, I've always really liked Rachmaninoff. I remember the first time I heard his C-sharp minor prelude, I was 10 years old at this small summer festival in Northern California at Idlewild. And they have these little outdoor A-frame practice huts like at Aspen or at Banff. That you sort of just go out and you practice, and then you head in and you have lunch when you're not having lessons or group activities. So I was out there practicing, and I was walking back to go and have lunch through these little A-framed houses, and I heard this piece, and I was just transfixed as I ran up and pushed my like chubby little 10-year-old face against the window. And I listened to this girl finish playing this piece, and I barged in and scared her to death. And I just said, "What are you playing?" And it turned out to be this Rachmaninoff prelude, and I fell in love with it and learned it, and he's been one of my favorite composers.
Did you always feel that you were born for the stage? Have you always been comfortable on stage?
I think so. I've always enjoyed performing, and I think the variety of stages that I've been on is really helped with any nerves that I might have had. I did a lot of performing in supermarkets as a kid, and just being in front
supermarkets.
In supermarkets.
So tell us a little bit about this.
All right. Well, Los Angeles and asthma don't mix too well together, and so there was a lot of smog, and I was in the hospital every month until I was about 10 years old. So I knew all the doctors and nurses on a first-name basis, and the one thing that I took away from those experiences is that hospitals are not fun for children at all. They're terrible. So when I was 7, I was grocery shopping with my parents at a Pavilion supermarket near my house, and for some reason there was this white baby grand piano about this size in the meat department.
In the meat department?
Yeah, right between like the bologna and the ham, just white baby grand piano. So I said, I don't know why. I think the store hired someone to come and play throughout the holiday season, but that person just wasn't there, so it was just a grand piano in the meat department. So I sat down and I played, and since I was 7 and really dorky looking, people I think felt bad for me and gave me some money. And so by the end of the night, I'd made like $5, and my dad asked me what I wanted to do with it, and I said, well, I want to give it to Children's Hospital. I think it's a great organization. And he imparted a strong life lesson then and told me that I couldn't send cash in the mail because someone would steal it, which is a good thing to know. So I wasn't deterred. I went back for the next 5 days until Christmas, determined to raise enough money to send to Children's Hospital, and at the end of the 5 days, I'd raised $1,500. And it took off. So it was an amazing experience, definitely not glamorous, although I did get free Panda Express because that was on the other side of the piano, and that was awesome. Terrible acoustics, not the best piano, but the music that I was playing, that I loved to play, was inspiring complete strangers to give to something that I found meaningful, and that was amazing. So for the next 2 winters, from December 1st to 25th, I played in the grocery store in the meat department. And by the time I was 9, I'd raised $35,000. I'd played on the Rosie O'Donnell show, and it really just sort of took off. So the first year was only 5 days. It was on a whim. We ended up raising $1,500, which was great. The second year, I wanted to have more control over it. So I planned 25 days, December 1st to 25th, and I wanted to raise $10,000. That was my goal. News outlets started picking it up. I was in papers and on TV, and it was a little overwhelming as an 8-year-old, but we got a phone call from somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, and hi, this is the Rosie O'Donnell show. We'd like to fly you and your, well, I guess they just told my parent that nobody called me directly. I was 8. But they called my parents. They said, look, we're going to fly one of you and your son out to New York, and we'd love to have him on the show. So that was my first trip to New York when I was 8. So they brought me out. I was, I think, $2,200 shy and of my $10,000 goal. I think they brought me out like in February, so this was after the second year had passed. And Yamaha kicked in the last bit of money and gave me this little keyboard, which was nice. And I don't know, it was just a fun adventure.
So then you gave the money to the Children's Hospital?
All of it.
What was that like? For a kid to raise all this money and instead of thinking of himself, thought of others, what was that like?
It was incredible. I mean, I play all the time. I play every day. And when I was living at home with my parents, I was like a dishwasher. I was just this background noise. You know, like after a while, you can only hear so many preludes or etudes, and then you just stop listening. So I play it and I enjoy it. And the holiday seasons are intense, especially in LA. People don't enjoy themselves. They're just fighting for parking, then fighting to get space in stores, and just fighting. It's just very chaotic and very stressful. And I didn't know any of these people. It was just, a big mall. And the fact that I was playing, to see someone that was just tired and just unhappy and overworked and just, I really want to get home and just not deal with the 405 today, walk by and then stop and listen to some Mozart for 5 minutes and see their whole face brighten up and then see what this movement was all about and give money, and you saw that it changed their day, but also know that it changed their day and it inspired them to help other people. That was incredible. I mean, to be in the middle of that was really, really amazing.
So you experienced this at an early age. Is that something that you've tried to recreate for yourself, that type of energy later in life? I guess after that you went through conservatory.
I did. So I graduated, so it was first the grocery store, then I graduated to a shopping mall, and then I graduated to real concert halls. Then I went to a conservatory in Toronto. I went to the Glenn Gould School, and that was great. It was very cold. And I graduated after 4 years, and I realized of all the places I'd played, the one that stuck out and that was the most meaningful for me was the meat department. I really liked that experience. And I wanted to recapture the magic that was in the air. So I started an organization, Art of Giving Back, and it aims to help young classical musicians make their transitions through their careers and give back to the community.
So take me back to that. So
Sure.
For a conservatory student aspiring to a career, there's so much that has to happen between graduation and actually having that career.
Definitely.
Is that what you're trying to bridge?
Not only that, there are a few problems that I personally ran into. I didn't have any friends that were musicians. The only time I was around other musicians, aside from my private teacher, was when I went to a summer festival. And those are great, but they're 2 or 3 weeks long, and then everyone goes back to reality, and then you're just another piano kid in your school in LA, and it's odd. So when I was finally in a conservatory, I was finally around a bunch of people like me. And I met people that were older than me and were able to give me some really great advice. So when I graduated, I was 22, and I thought, man, at 22, if I could have met my 15-year-old self, I could have saved so much time. There would have been no way for me to know the difference between Peabody and Curtis or Juilliard and New England Conservatory. That information isn't available online. And I didn't have any friends to give that to me, so I thought, this is a really important gap that isn't bridged. In some places there are. There's Juilliard pre-college, there's the MSM pre-college thing, but by and large, you could be in Kentucky and be one of the best violinists and just not know what's out there, and that could be very, very difficult. So that was one transition that I personally experienced, and I wanted to help. The other was that I saw a lot of students going through a conservatory. And conservatories are great, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking conservatories. I think they're very important, and they teach musicians their craft, and they teach them how to manage their instrument, which is very, it's necessary to be a great musician. However, I feel like there's a huge, huge emphasis placed on practicing. And there's this feeling in a lot of major conservatories and the atmosphere that if you practice hard enough and you go to the right school and you're a little bit lucky, that your career will just unfold in front of you. It's just this magical thing that once you hit 15 hours a day, that boom, your career happens. And that's not the case.
Absolutely.
And I think that in 2015, it's actually a little bit dangerous because you have student loans.
Yes.
and those didn't exist nearly as much 30 years ago. So a lot of the faculty that I've worked with or that I see teaching, they develop their career in a totally different environment. there was a lot more funding for the arts. The level of playing wasn't as high. There weren't as many musicians. So they graduated with little to no student loans, maybe something very small, but they could pay off in 1 or 2 years. And then they would apply for things, they'd win competitions, and there was a lot more opportunity. But now I have friends that are graduating from Juilliard and Indiana University, and they owe $100,000, $200,000, and they're one of X number of pianists or violinists in the world. And they graduate, and they're paralyzed almost with what's next. So rather than face that fear, what they do is they stay in school because that's what's safe, and they rack up more debt. And then they're 30, and they're like, oh my God, really, what's next? So I wanted to help. I wanted to help them. You know, it's also a position in a way that I'm in because I just finished school, and when I took a year in between my undergraduate studies in Toronto and then a graduate program I did at Oberlin. I took a year out of school to start this organization. But I had so many friends, and I still do, who are grappling with that question. So the ability to give recent graduates the chance to perform and network and meet well-established musicians kind of helps ease them into this professional life.
Yes, so how does that work?
Okay,
What's the principle behind the art of giving back?
So the way that it functions is we have a roster of artists between the ages of 20 and 30. They're either in or they've graduated from top conservatories. And what we do is we set up performances with these artists. I mean, I think anybody who wants a performing career, they need to perform. It's pretty much as simple as that. And they need to know other people so they can perform more. So we set up performances between these artists and very, very well-established, famous superstars. Last night we did a concert with Jeremy Denk,
yes,
where he played alongside 3 of our artists. And I mean, it's New York City, and there are so many events and concerts happening all the time. These 3 artists are fantastic. You know, they're really, really great musicians, but they're in their early 20s. So if they had set up a concert on a Friday night, their friends would come, and their small network of people would come. But the fact that Jeremy was playing, it was a whole different crowd. And who knows where the after-concert conversations, what sort of relationships this will lead into. So that's one of the things that we do. We give these performance opportunities to recent conservatory graduates. The second thing that we do is we set up performances between the same artists, recent conservatory graduates, and up-and-coming young musicians in middles and high schools. So it's this kind of tiered mentorship program. So you could, like, again, be this really talented 13, 14-year-old musician. We'd come into your school, we do a workshop, we explain, hey, look, we were sitting where you were sitting a few years ago, here's how we made that transition. And then we set up a performance. So they get to play alongside and be inspired by somebody who's just a little bit more advanced than them.
That's absolutely incredible. So what are you hoping to achieve and teach these young performers through this program?
2 things. One, that a career in music is possible. I think there's a lot of pessimism in classical music, and it's definitely pervasive through any conservatory that you walk through. And I think that if you have a traditional model of how to build a career, then yes, you should experience a lot of pessimism because it's very difficult and it's almost impossible.
When you were growing up, did you feel like you had to go through that traditional model? Was that your mindset?
I felt like I was nudged towards it, especially going through a conservatory. It's kind of this unspoken atmosphere and pressure that you feel. You have to compete in the Van Cliburn competition. You have to go to Juilliard. You have to do these certain things, or you're not really a pianist yet, or you're not really a musician yet. And I don't know. I mean, I felt the pressure, but I ignored it. And sometimes it really upset my teachers.
And of course, the reality is you could do all of those things and still have the same difficulties in finding a career.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's so much in conservatories that is not taught, and that's really the whole purpose of this show, Living the Classical Life, to try to find what it takes to get there.
Right.
So I'm so fascinated by what you're doing.
Thank you.
In bringing this to young people.
Yeah, but to get back to what you were saying about the 2 things that I wanted musicians to learn is, one, that you don't have to have this traditional path. I mean, I went to school in Canada. I got a performance diploma from a conservatory, and then my bachelor's from a different school. And then I took a year out of school and moved back home, which was just odd. And then I did an artist diploma. And if you talk to any major teacher, at least my major teachers, they would say, why are you doing this? This isn't a good idea. I had quite a few current piano professors, I won't say who, but they pulled me aside and they said, this little project of yours, it's nice, but you really just need to practice more. You can't be a businessman and be a musician. And they believed it. They were upset. They said, you have potential as a performer. Why are you not practicing 8 hours a day? Why are you only doing 4 hours a day? Do this when you're 40. Get your degrees first. And I told them, well, no. They didn't like that. They didn't like it at all. But I told them, like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'd really like your support in it. I don't want to practice 8 hours a day. If I have the time, I might get up to that, but I don't ever have an intention to do the Van Cliburn competition. I really enjoy doing this, and that's okay. So that's the first thing I'd like to teach people is do what you want and figure out a way to make it viable. But the second thing, and I think this is the most important thing, is that music brings us together, and it has this amazing ability to inspire people. And I think that when you're in a conservatory, especially when you're in a conservatory, it's easy to forget that. It's easy to get caught up with learning all the notes for the Winter Wind Etude or Faux-Follet or Islamé and just getting bogged down by competitiveness and the fact that you have to pay your rent and maybe pay your student loans and just survive. And there's a lot of pressure, and it makes you all these little individuals. And the main purpose of this organization, other than to help students with their careers, is to remind musicians that, hey, by creating music with people around you, you have the ability to help people. And that's amazing. The musicians that were playing with Jeremy last night, during the rehearsal, their eyes just lit up, and I could see that Jeremy was having a great time. And, he's played these pieces a bunch of times, and he's played with them with some of the world's best musicians. But the chance to play along somebody who's maybe in a way following in your footsteps, that can be really, really amazing.
It seems that you always carved out your own pathways. I know that there was a time that you really wanted to go to the Liszt Festival in Sopron, Hungary, but you didn't necessarily have the means to do so. But you made it happen. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Hungary is really far away from Los Angeles. It's a super long flight, and it's not cheap, nor was the summer festival. But my piano instructor at the time told me that I had to go. It was a really great program, and that I should try to find a way to make it happen. So I approached my parents, and they said, "Look, we're sorry, but we can't afford this transcontinental flight, and unfortunately, you can't go this year." And I thought, well, that's silly. I really want to go. I couldn't exactly get a job. I was in high school. I left my house on the bus at 7 a.m. I got back at 4:30, and then I had to practice, and then I had homework. So any job that I took, it would be on the weekends only. It wouldn't have worked. So I was mulling it over for a couple of weeks, and I had an English class at the end of every day, and the teacher asked that we bring in food for potluck one week. So I took the public bus to school, and we passed by this place called U.S. Donuts. So I got off at that stop, which was like 2 stops before my high school. I went and I bought a dozen donuts. I went to school. My high school is huge, though. It had 3,600 kids, and you're trapped in. Once you're in, you cannot leave. And I was just carrying around this big, giant pink box filled with hot donuts. So suddenly I was the coolest kid in school. Like, everybody wanted to talk to me. And like, girls that never talked to me were like, "Hey, Nick, how's it going? What's in the box?" But I tried to respect my teacher's wishes, and I kept the donuts for myself and for the class until someone offered to buy one. And then I thought, well, I bought this dozen for $4.50, and I can make a nice little profit. So I sold all of them like in 3 minutes. So I went to the potluck empty-handed, but my wallet was a little bit heavier, which was nice. But I realized there was an opportunity. We have a lot of students in a school that have terrible lunches, and they really, really want donuts. So I made a little business out of it. I chatted up the bus driver, who's a very, very friendly elderly man, and he agreed to start stopping at the donut shop every day, waiting for me to get my donuts and then get back on. Even if the light changed green, red, he would just wait very patiently. And the people on the bus never understood why we waited at the donut shop. But I talked to the donut shop owner, and I said, "Look, I'm going to buy 30 dozen donuts from you every week. So can I pay you on Monday, get it for $3.50 a dozen?" And he said, "Sure." And then the first few weeks, what I did was I took all these donuts and I bribed everybody, all the teachers, all the staff, all the security guards. I just said, "Look, you manage 3,600 kids. We're a lot to deal with. Please have a donut. Whenever you see me, you can have a donut." And who doesn't like a hot donut in the morning? So it greased, there he is, right?
That's what you did there.
But it was a very lucrative business. I was making like $300 a week. The cash was just rolling in. People really liked donuts. And so I would just show up to school with like these 6 bright pink boxes of donuts, and I'd sell out by 10 a.m. every day. In my backpack, I stopped carrying textbooks. I just had my music books and then a Tupperware filled with king-size candy bars from Costco, because I didn't need textbooks, because the teachers would give me passes on assignments. They said, oh, well, I really liked your concert last week, and I really appreciate the donuts, so just turn in the assignment when you have time. So I ended up making like $6,000. I made a lot of money from this.
And you went to the festival.
And I went to the festival, and I had more spending money than I knew what to do with. So I paid for the flight. There is a kind of funny ending, though. It's against the law to sell. I'm not advising any students do not sell things in public school because it's against the law. But I got called in to the principal's office because there was one teacher, Miss Silverman, who hates donuts. She just doesn't eat sugar, and she sees them as unhealthy, and she didn't like me as a result. So she also, I mean, to be fair, like I was selling donuts during her class. So she turned and she'd like be writing on the board, and she'd look around, and like people are just like sending me money through other people, and I'm just like sending donuts, and she's like, this is ridiculous. So she talks to the principal. She says, look, we're opening ourselves to liability. This is against the law. He's not paying taxes, health code violations. Like we cannot have this. So the principal called me in, and he said, look, I respect what you're doing, and there's a huge group of teachers that supported me. They said that he has this cute tagline, "Hungry for Hungary," and they really liked the idea. But the principal said, "Look, we can't allow this anymore. I'm sorry, so you're gonna have to stop." And I said, "Well, today's Wednesday, and I paid for the whole week, so can I go through till Friday?" And he's like, "I don't have time for this. Like, I have more important things." Sure, go through Friday, but please stop after that. So I said, "Sure." And I asked him what his favorite donut was. I knew it was a chocolate eclair. And his receptionist, she really liked the pink ones with the sprinkles. So what I started doing was I would arrive to school before him. The receptionist would get her donut. She'd open his office. I'd leave the chocolate eclair on his desk. Of course, I kept selling donuts because I'm not going to get expelled for selling donuts. And I was never bothered again. And so I sold through the rest of the year. So that's how I paid to go to Hungary.
So Nick, you've had so many non-traditional opportunities and unusual pathways to music. Do you also enjoy the traditional concert setting and playing concerts as such?
Very much so. I think that there's something exciting about being in a really great hall. There's something that's kind of exhilarating about the grand formality of a big proper recital. It is nice. However, since for the past 5 or 6 years, I don't think I've given a single performance where I haven't spoken beforehand. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great, to have a traditional setting and a traditional concert hall and a traditional program. That's all fine. But I think it's important to communicate with your audience, and from big venues to small, I've made a point of addressing the audience.
What do you tell your young colleagues, aspiring performers who might have doubts about whether they can make it in the field of music?
That I have doubts, that everybody has doubts, and that you really have to figure out what your idea of making it is and how realistic that is. Mm-hmm. And I think recognizing that if you work hard and if you're intelligent with the way that you work, you can accomplish quite a bit. I mean, I was living in the middle of LA going to public school, and I found a way to finance a trip to Europe for 2 weeks, in a way that no one would have ever thought of. My parents basically said, give up, you're not going to go to Europe. Not in such a harsh way, but there's a way to do it. You just need to be flexible and a little bit creative and really be willing to put the work in.
Where do you see the art of giving back going in the future?
I see it developing into this movement of musicians that basically lend a helping hand to the people that are a little bit behind them, and they get pulled forward by the people that are ahead of them. This season we have 10 concerts here in New York.
10 concerts?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So we do of the things that we do. We just did our big gala with Jeremy Dank last night. Mm-hmm. I set up 10 community outreach concerts in various retirement homes And through donations that we received last night, we pay our artists to go out and do a small concert to run through their repertoire. We're also doing 3 concerts in private homes throughout New York City where our artists, again in their mid-20s, are performing with younger musicians. And I mean, there's smaller, more intimate venues. They only seat 25 to 35 people. But again, it's a performance, it's a paid performance. And I just see it as this movement where it kind of takes away the fear of developing a career in classical music. I mean, I think in a lot of ways I defy a lot of the standards. It's 2015. And I'm living in New York City, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world. I'm a classical pianist, and I run a nonprofit for the arts. Right? It's like the 2 worst business ideas you could ever have. But it works, and I found a way to make it work. And it's not always easy, but it's exciting, and it's very non-traditional. And I think embracing something that's different and a little bit scary and acknowledging before you go into it, it's going to be a little bit difficult and it's going to be a little bit scary, but that's okay. And that those feelings are normal and expected, and that you survive them.
Nick, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a
Yeah.
pleasure having you on, and good luck with your projects.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Yes.